Now this is an epic story from the Bible that's been on my mind lately. And when I tell you about it, I want you to be ready, because it involves one of the most powerful statements ever made. Many years ago, in a land far away, there was a very special king named David. This wasn't just any ordinary king. Oh no, this guy was a warrior. He fought fierce battles and led his people to victory against all odds. But even warriors, as great as David can get, scared sometimes, especially when they have to fight an opponent who's bigger, stronger, and meaner than anyone they've ever faced before. That's exactly what happened to David when he heard that a giant warrior named Goliath had challenged his army. Everyone was terrified, including David's own friends. They couldn't believe anyone could be so big and scary looking, with armor made out of bronze and carrying a spear that was like a big metal tube. It was clear that Goliath was a tough nut to crack. But David didn't let fear control him. You see, David had something much stronger inside of him: faith in God. While everyone else was too afraid to do anything, David said, "Hey, don't worry. God's got this." Then he did something totally unexpected. Instead of getting scared and running away, he stayed calm and walked right up to Goliath. He told Goliath that he was going to fight him with spears or swords because David knew he didn't need those things. Why? Because he had something much more powerful: his faith in God. And let me tell you, it was a sight to behold. The way David talked to Goliath was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. He looked at the giant and told him, "You might think you're really tough and strong, but in God's eyes, you're nothing but a dead man walking." That's some serious guts right there. Now, some people might think that David was just trying to scare Goliath, but that's not the real reason why he did it. You see, David knew that his God was bigger and more powerful than anything Goliath could ever imagine, so he wasn't afraid to speak up and tell him what he thought. That's right. David wasn't just a brave warrior, he was also a true leader who wasn't afraid to stand up for what he believed in. And the best part, his faith in God gave him the courage to do it. Now, we're only getting started, because after that, things took a wild turn. Just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier, David did something completely unexpected. He pulled out his trusty sling and shot a stone at Goliath's forehead. It was a clean hit that sent the giant crashing to the ground like he was made out of glass. It was a moment of truth when everyone realized that David's faith had given him the strength to defeat the seemingly invincible Goliath. It's a reminder that no matter how big or scary our opponents may seem, if we trust in God, we can overcome any challenge that comes our way. So next time you're facing your own personal giant, remember the story of David and Goliath and take a deep breath. Trust in God and let your faith guide you to victory. Who knows? You might just surprise yourself with what you're capable of. After all, faith can move mountains, even if those mountains are made of bronze and look like unbeatable warriors. Now, what does the story of David and Goliath teach us about how God works in our lives? Well, for starters, it shows us that God doesn't care how big or strong our enemies are. In fact, he loves to take the little guys and help them beat the big guys. Just think about it. David was just a young boy who was chosen by God to be the future king of Israel. On the other hand, Goliath was a giant who was as tall as an oak tree and was wearing heavy armor. But God didn't care about Goliath's size or strength. He knew that David had something much more powerful on his side: faith. Sometimes in life, we can feel like we're up against impossible odds, like we don't have a chance of winning. But the story of David and Goliath reminds us that we should never underestimate the power of faith. No matter how big or scary our problems may seem, God is always on our side, and he wants us to know that we can't win. Another thing that we learn from this story is that we should never try to take on our enemies by ourselves. David might have been a great warrior, but he knew that he needed God's help to defeat Goliath. That's why he asked for King Saul, asked permission to get some bread and a spear and shield. But David didn't use these things to fight Goliath. Instead, he used them to remind himself of God's presence and power. He knew that he wasn't relying on his own strength, but on God's strength. And let's be honest, who of us has even needed a little reminder of God's love and support when times get tough? We can't do everything on our own. And we shouldn't try to. We should remember that we are a part of a bigger community of believers who are here to support and encourage each other. Finally, the story of David and Goliath teaches us that we should never give up in the face of adversity. Even when David was facing a giant who seemed unbeatable, he didn't throw in the towel. He stood his ground and faced his enemy head on. And guess what? It paid off big time. David didn't just win the battle. He became a legend. So next time we're feeling down or like we're not going to make it, we should remember the words of the great philosopher and theologian St. Augustine. The world is big enough for all of us to live in, but it's too small for all of us to fight in. Let's strive to be more like David and less like Goliath, not just in our battles with external enemies, but also in our internal struggles. Let's have faith in God, rely on our communities, and never, ever give up. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed today's message. If you did, please leave us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more uplifting content like this. Until next time, stay strong, stay positive, and remember that God is always with us. Thanks for watching.